What were we thinking? A country had just angrily fractured into its constituent pieces. Its monolithic politics had dissolved into a riotous carnival. Its rigid, hyper-centralized economy crumpled and struggled to put food on the table. A polarized geopolitical world became demagnetized and turned enemies into, well, no one really knew what. Criminals roamed the streets and strolled the corridors of power. Opportunity was everywhere. The unraveling of the Soviet Union ended more than 70 years of revolution, isolation, rivalry, détente, and desperation. The emergence of a fragile, feverish Russian Federation as its most prominent successor was one of the most dramatic and traumatic events of the 20th century. The USSR was dead. Russia was something new, maybe something promising, brought forth from the cathartic combination of perestroika's economic restructuring, the political openness of glasnost, and an enticing law on joint ventures. The events of 1991, Boris Yeltsin standing on a tank, the Soviet flag slowly coming down over the Kremlin, shimmered across cable TV screens in front of a globalizing audience. By then, companies were going places they had never been to before. Markets once considered too far, too dangerous, or too primitive were becoming hotspots. It was time to go to Russia. Executives around the world bought heavy boots and overcoats and got on planes. They were met by a country curious about and suspicious of foreigners, but starved of investment and eager to get as rich as everyone everywhere else. Over the course of 30 years, 3 presidents, 11 prime ministers, 2 financial crashes, 2 cross-border wars, and millions of shots of vodka, Russia went from a mysterious, opaque frontier to a complex but manageable place to do deals. It was exhilarating. It was scary. It was never, ever boring. Roughly during a single generation, companies and the people who ran them created, and sometimes destroyed, enormous wealth. And then it was all over, even more brutally than it began. Maybe the end came gradually and then suddenly, along the famous line from Hemingway. Few people in business or politics predicted that in 2022, Vladimir Putin would send the Russian army over the border toward Kiev. When he did, it was as if the world had suddenly started to speak an unfamiliar new language. All our reference points about how countries and companies interact were suddenly unrecognizable. It was a disorienting shock to the system, corporate and corporal. All the assumptions the international business community made about Russia, even as they had evolved and matured over the past 30 or so years, came under crushing pressure. In the wake of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, some companies fled Russia, incurring enormous financial costs. Other companies chose to stay in Russia, attracting enormous reputational costs. Companies in limbo between staying and leaving say they are trapped, wanting to get out but not knowing how best to do it or whether it's worth it.